Hello, welcome. Oh, I'm so excited to talk to you today. Today, we're going to talk about, oops, we're going to talk about what to do if you make a mistake on your taxes. I know this is something that a lot of people live in fear about. It's what makes taxes feel scary sometimes. I think a lot of you think that the IRS at any minute is going to come knocking at your door and give you a full body cavity search. And I'm doing this episode today to assure you that that is not going to happen, and that the tax code is really built for, yes, human beings who make mistakes, and that there's ways to fix them. All right, so this is going to be a short and sweet episode that's just gives you the 411 on how to do it, okay? And whether you even need to, all right? So trying to keep it super practical, and let's get started. Also, if you find that, if you know that you have a friend, maybe a spouse, maybe a child or a parent who's made a boo-boo on their taxes, of course, feel free to share this episode with them. The point here is really to help as many people as possible. All right, so let's jump in. So basically, when you're filing your taxes, what do you do if you mess up, right? There's some big mess ups and there's small mess ups. And I'm going to help you sort out which are the kind that you need to file an amended tax return for, and which kind you can just let go and they'll get corrected on their own, or the IRS will send you a letter to help you correct it. Okay. All right. So the basics are, if you make one of the kind of mistakes where you do actually need to make a correction, there is a tax form called an amended return. That's the point of an amended tax return, is to amend a previously filed return. Okay. And so the point there is that you're just adjusting something in a tax return you already filed. It's a really great news. You don't have to do that whole tax return all over again. Everything that's accurate in the return you submitted stays. The point of a 1040X, an amended return, that's what it's called. The 1040X amended return filing, the only work you do is actually just highlighting the part that's a change from the return that got submitted. Okay, so it's not like the big deal that you might think it is. Also, if you had a tax professional prepare your return for you, that tax professional, first of all, has easy access to an amended return for you. They should be able to file one very quickly, and it should not cost, yes, they're going to charge you something, but it should not cost the same amount that a full tax return is going to cost. Okay, so just FYI, so you can be a good consumer. However, you don't actually need to go to a tax professional to file an amendment. They're not that hard. You can just get the form off the IRS website and do it that way, or do it through, TurboTax, etc. Okay. All right. So when do you and when do you not need to actually amend your tax return? Okay. Well, there's some mistakes that are so minor and frankly so common that the IRS doesn't even want you to file an amended return. This is kind of curious, and you might be interested to know that, for one thing, dyslexia, super common. One of the most frequent mistakes in tax returns are that people transpose numbers. So somebody might have a salary of $69,000, but report $96,000, right? Transposing numbers is so common that the IRS computers are basically trained to identify that. And so if one of your mistakes was transposing 2 digits, reversing 2 digits, the IRS computer will find that and it will correct it on its own. Okay. So you don't need to file an amended return in that case, which is pretty awesome. And it's a very reassuring thing to know for those of us with that kind of a brain. And I certainly have transposed a number or two in my lifetime, although believe me, I comb every tax return I file as quickly as I can. Mathematical errors of any variety, also, you do not need to file an amendment for that. The IRS computers, again, will locate and adjust for mathematical errors, okay? Also, if you are missing a 1099 or missing a W-2 or missing a schedule that you are supposed to include with your tax return, those in general, that is not a scenario where the IRS wants you to file an amended return. What will happen in all of these cases is that the IRS is going to send you a letter, okay? The IRS is going to send you a letter saying what happened, not in the clearest language. I mean, I have to say that I have a little critique here. I wish it felt more easy to read and understandable when people got letters from the IRS, but please read it. If you get mail from the IRS, most of the time, they're fixing a mistake from your tax return, and opening that letter is going to save you all the headache in the world. It's usually a good thing, okay? And I will say this as a tax practitioner, I know, I see you. If you are a person who gets filled with dread and fear when you see an IRS envelope arrive at your doorstep, please don't bury it. Please don't ignore it. I've seen people do this before, and sometimes it's a thing where they're trying to correct a mistake or giving you some very important information that you need to know, like, for example, that you were missing a 1099 and they got it reported to them, but you didn't report it on your return. You have to pay up if you underreported that, or you have to respond if you did report that 1099 and it's the IRS's error, okay? So it is really important to open that mail. I know it might seem scary. If you are so filled with dread that you can't bear to do it, give that letter at least to your tax practitioner, okay? I say this as a tax practitioner just because I see it so frequently that people avoid when they see those letters. And the other thing I want you to know is that if it is the thing you fear, if it is an actual letter announcing an audit, and that's not even what this episode is about. I'm just talking about a little correction letter, right? But sometimes a letter could be an audit. You have a 30-day window to respond to any audit. And if you miss the window, you lose your audit. You lose. And even if the IRS is in error, they get to do what that audit proposed because you didn't respond in that 30-day window. So do not sit on mail from the IRS. Ever, ever, ever. Open it immediately. Sometimes you need to take one day to sleep on it because sometimes you are so freaked out. And I say this because I have seen it. Sometimes people get that letter, they're so freaked out, so filled with dread when they read the letter that they have zero comprehension of what is in the letter. It feels you're so worried about something that you don't even comprehend it. So I recommend open it, read it, stick it in a drawer for 1 day, no longer. If you need to, come back to it with a clear head the next day, reread it, see if you can figure out what it says. And if you can't, now it's time to involve a professional. Okay. That's your little triage for a letter from the IRS. Okay. That was a little PSA about reading your mail, but you got to do it. You got to do it. Because if you ignore that stuff, you just compound and snowball your tax problems. Okay. All right. So you're going to open your mail and read, because sometimes what it's doing is the IRS has identified, oh, you flipped a 7 and a 2 in this, income reporting number. And so it's wrong. And so the other thing I want you to know is that usually that is an innocent mistake. And usually the IRS knows that. For example, if you transpose 2 numbers or if you make a math error, the IRS knows that. They send you a letter. The other thing that's important to know, though, is that it needs to get corrected. The IRS will automatically send you a letter showing you how they corrected it or what the math, once they recalculate what the math actually shows. And of course, that's going to come out with a different number, either owed or due back to you, right? And so there's going to be some money involved. You're going to either owe a little bit more or you're going to get a bigger refund. It can go either direction. They will give you a bigger refund, absolutely. But if you owe more, you're going to also owe more. And I just want you to understand that that's not an audit and that's not saying you're in trouble. That's them proactively fixing a mistake that you made and helping you avoid having to file new paperwork but you do have to settle up the actual correct tax that you owe. So you have to read that letter and you have to see, oh, okay, that means I owe 10 more bucks or 100 more, or I get a, $1,000 extra refund. This happens. Okay. It happens. It's a very frequent kind. It's the most frequent kind of correspondence from the IRS. Okay, that was a lot on that, but oh my goodness, I just cannot tell you how many times in my tax practice, somebody will send me a letter way past the response window. And I'm like, well, this would have been great if you sent it to me on time, but we can't do anything now. So just be careful. IRS mail, I know you want to ignore it, but you really don't want to ignore it. Okay, so do not file an amended return if you transposed numbers, have a mathematical error, are missing a document like a W-2, 1099, or a schedule. The IRS will send you a letter telling you what's missing and giving you the next steps for correcting that. Okay, so that's great. In any of those scenarios, you don't actually have to do anything besides open your mail and see how the IRS is correcting it for you and what you then need to adjust for. Okay, so that's the no amended return scenario. Now let's talk about when you do need to file an amended tax return for a mistake you made. Okay, so here are the scenarios. One, if you incorrectly reported your filing status, so that's really important. Filing status means you're filing as a single taxpayer, or married filing joint, married filing separately. Sometimes you might be filing, if you were widowed, for example, you might need to file an amended return to put that into the return. Things like that. So filing status is single, married filing joint, married filing separately, head of household, and those things like if you are a qualified widow, etc., widower. Okay. If you incorrectly reported your dependents, that you have them, that you don't have them, the number of them, that's really important. If you incorrectly reported your total income, first of all, you definitely want to file an amended return if you incorrectly reported your income, because, you could be committing a felony and you want to come forward as quickly as you can and fix that mistake. Otherwise, if it's seen to be actually deliberate, you're in some big trouble. Okay, so that's a big, big deal, that one. And you also want to file an amended return if you have deductions or credits that you either took in error or didn't take and are entitled to. Okay, so those are the reasons you want to file an amended return. Now let's talk about the actual return. Okay, so an amended tax return is called a 1040X. Think of the X as like we're changing something, or we're Xing out the one that we filed. Okay, so it's important to understand that you only file an amended tax return once you've already filed your original return for that year. If you haven't filed at all for that year, you're simply going to file the taxes for that year. That's it. There's no amendment. An amendment is amending something that's already been done. If you haven't done the thing to begin with, then you're not filing an amendment. You're filing the actual tax return. Okay. All right. So only file an amendment after your original return has been filed. Of course, if it hasn't been filed yet, maybe you've prepped it and it's close and you realize there's a mistake, just fix the mistake in the actual tax return before you submit. Then you avoid all of this headache and you can ignore this episode. We're talking about how to fix something once you've already hit send. Okay, so it used to be that amended returns were the bane of my existence because I run a virtually paperless tax practice. This is a bit of a revolution. Believe me, the tax industry has killed an unconscionable number of trees. And I knew from day one, I started Sunlight Tax as paperless as it's possible to be tax firm. But amended returns for a long time were not allowed to be. They basically hadn't updated their IRS systems because the IRS is so disgracefully underfunded that they hadn't updated the system. So there was no electronic filing of amended returns. You had to file them on paper. So this was like always really annoying because I didn't have a good process for it. And I would like have to go to Kinko's and like print stuff out. Not my favorite thing. But as of 2020, tax year 2020, they finally made electronic filing available. It's not available in every single complicated scenario, but for most of you, the sort of get her done version, like of a basic amended return, you can file electronically now. So that's for the last several tax years since tax year 2020. So that is really good news. Also, can I just make a slight aside about the IRS? Funding the IRS is good, and it's especially good if you are middle class, middle income, or working class, or poor. The people who want to underfund the IRS are the wealthy. If we simply collected the actual tax that was owed by the top 1%, I'm not even talking about like changing any tax laws, simply collecting what they actually have been determined to owe, then we could end poverty in America. So I just want to say that all this stuff about making the IRS into a boogeyman that the middle class hates and wants to underfund, underfunding the IRS means the only people who it can audit are the easy people, and easy tax returns to audit are middle class and working class people. The hard returns to audit, the hard people to go after for collections or for audit and for tax scams is the 1%, because those are the people who have an army of tax accountants and lawyers who will fight and throw in obstacles and make things very difficult. Not to mention that they're doing very complex tax maneuvers. You and I, we are not doing any complex tax maneuvers. And so it is very simple to audit us. So when we underfund the IRS, what it means is middle class people get audited more. When we fund the IRS properly, and if we funded them to the degree that we definitely should, taxes would be more fair, because the 1% would be treated the way the rest of us already are, and the pressure would come off the rest of us because we'd have the resources to actually collect money owed by the wealthiest people in this country. Okay, PSA over. PSA over, but I just want to be super clear that funding the IRS is a good thing. It's a very, very positive thing, and it benefits you and I. Okay. Not to mention when you need help and you call their practitioner hotline or you call their, taxpayer services, it's really nice when they're funded enough that they answer the phone. They've been so dramatically underfunded in years past that for the last 1 or 2 years, you cannot even get someone on the phone when you need help. And that is not good. Okay, done with that. Stepping off my little soapbox for a second. Let's jump back in. So the 1040X. So we have electronic filing now for tax years 2020 on, thank goodness. I also want you to understand that there is a statute of limitations to be aware of when it comes to filing amended returns. So if you, for example, missed a big tax credit, let's say you bought an electric vehicle the first year that the new EV or CV credit started, and you didn't realize and you didn't put it on your tax return, and you want to get that money, you have to file the amended return within a certain statute of limitations in order to get money back. So you can file an amended return to fix a mistake at any time for any year. But if you want to receive money back that you are owed from that amendment, you have to meet the statute of limitations. Here it is. I'm just going to quote the IRS here. Okay. Quote, for a credit or refund, you must file Form 1040X within 3 years, including extensions, after the date you filed your original return, or within 2 years after the date you paid the tax, whichever is later. Okay. So 2 to 3 years is your limit to get money back from the IRS. So you do want to kind of pay attention to tax credits, make sure you get the credits you are owed, make sure that you're getting every deduction that you can. If you realize retroactively you missed a whole bunch of tax deductions, for example, my self-employed audience, you are absolutely entitled to file an amended return with those additional deductions you didn't take for that year. And what's going to happen if you do that? You are going to get a check in the mail for the money that you would have saved. Okay, it will make you whole, but you have to do it within 2 to 3 years. P.S. If you want to download my free deductions guide, my visual guide to self-employed people's tax deductions, you can go to sunlighttax.com/deductions guide, and you can find that. If you find a bunch of deductions you never took, by all means, file an amended tax return and get that money. Okay. So don't forget that statute of limitations. If you're expecting to get money back, you simply are not going to get any money back if you miss that window. So sad. So it's good to stay on top of this. Okay. Now, an amended return, basically how it works is very simple. You're not redoing the whole tax return. You don't have to gather up all your receipts and documents and all that stuff again. All you have to do is fill out, it's basically like 2 pages. There's like one little section where you write an explanation. It can be 1 sentence. It's not an essay. An explanation for why you are submitting an amended return, what it is you're trying to correct. And you basically just do the work that is the change. That's it. That's the only work you have to do. Okay. So it's actually really, really simple and pretty quick. Okay. Now, what about tracking the status? So it takes a little bit longer for amended returns. I don't exactly know why. They say on the website that it takes 6 to 8 weeks, but can be up to 16 weeks. That's going to depend on kind of like what the current workload of the IRS is, how well funded they are, etc. But helpfully, and I will include this link in today's show notes, there is a Where's My Amended Return page at the IRS, and you can just click it and you can actually track the status of your amended return, similar to like tracking a package through the UPS system. You can actually track your amended return through the Where's My Amended Return dialogue on the IRS website. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes today. FYI, if you didn't know this existed already, the IRS also has this tool for your regular tax return. So there is a place, and you can just Google this, Where's My Refund? If you just Google Where's My Refund IRS, you will come up to the Where's My Refund page, and it will show you the status of your refund working through the IRS system and when you can expect it. That's really helpful for a lot of people. And post-tax season, it's one of the most common emails I send to clients because they write to me saying, where's my refund? And I send them the link to that site. Here, you just go directly to the IRS and you can track it yourself. Okay. All right. That's all I have for you today. That was short and sweet. I hope that was really helpful for you. I want you to basically just feel reassured that we know you're human. The IRS knows you're human, and there's ways to fix your mistake if you made one. So you don't need to fret or worry, but do get it done. Do go onto the IRS website, pull down a 1040X, and just submit that as quickly as you can once you realize that you made the mistake, and you will be all good and all square once again. Now, if this episode was helpful to you, or you have a friend who might have made a tax whoopsie and they need the help, please, please, please share this episode with them. It helps me grow my little podcast. Podcasts are incredibly hard to grow. And so when you share my show, it helps me reach more listeners and get that helpful tax information to new people. So I really appreciate it. Also, if you like the show, would you leave me a glowing review? I'm going through my reviews right now because I'm in the middle of writing a book proposal to write the ultimate tax guide that hopefully you want. And so I'm actually selecting some of my reviews right now to put into this book proposal. So yours might be the review that gets me the book deal. If you want to see that book out in the world, just know that I'm at the moment paying very, very close attention to my reviews because I am pulling them for that purpose right now. Anyway, I hope this episode has been super helpful for you. I really appreciate you listening, and go out, be fearless. It's okay to make mistakes and we can fix them. All right. I'll see you on the next one. Bye. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'm so grateful for that. This video is for education and entertainment only. Nothing in this episode should be taken as individual tax or financial advice. You can find all the tools, books, and links I reference at sunlighttax.com/podcast.